everyone, this is Krystal, and today I am working with the July Scrapbook Add-On kit from Citrus Twist Kits. I have two photos here of some raspberries from my backyard, and I also have the Life Crafted kit off to the side in case I decide that I want to pull in a few things from that as well, but I'm going to mostly be focusing on the add-on kit. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on fast forward and get started. I'm going to start by going through the papers and picking out which ones I want to use on this spread. And this is the first time that I'm using this add-on kit, so it does take me just a minute to look at everything and see what's really here and figure out what I want to use. The first thing that caught my eye were those little strawberries that are on the cut apart sheet from the Sweet Story paper. And even though my pictures are raspberries, I thought that was just too perfect. There's certainly not going to be another page that I'm going to use those on. So I want to definitely use those. I'm going to end up fussy cutting them out of the paper. And then I'm just looking for other things that kind of match the same colors as the ones in my photo. So some greens and mints, and then lots of pinks to match the berries. So I'm going to start by cutting out this entire square of the cut apart. I'm going to use both that frame and the berries in the center. So I'm going to take just a little X-Acto knife and cut around the inside of that frame so that I can use it as part of my layers. And then I'm going to fussy cut each of those little strawberries. So I really had wished that there were more of these berries. I could have sprinkled them all around the page, but since I only have these three, I'm going to make them work and figure out where to put them on the page that they are really kind of highlighted. Okay, so I'm going to fussy cut those out. I'm just using a fine point scissors to do that. It was really simple. I don't get too detailed in the fussy cutting because I know they're going to be on a white background. I don't worry too much about them having a bit of a white border, especially around the stems, which are a little bit more intricate. So I just leave a white border and do kind of a rough fussy cut, and that's totally fine with me. I just looked at the rest of that cut apart sheet to see if there was anything else there that I knew that I wanted to use, and didn't see anything. So I'm just going to set it aside for now and move on to this paper, which I am just going to cut two strips of the pink stripes. So I really like this paper. I really like the stripes. They have a lot of texture. There's kind of a diagonal stripe on each of the stripes, the colorful stripes. And I definitely want to bring in some of those variations of pink. So I'm just cutting two strips of the pink papers from one end of that page, and I'm going to end up using those in my layers as well. I'm going to start with a white border around my photos. So I'm just using a little scrap of white cardstock and adding a thin white border around both of my photos. This is just going to help them stand out from all of those colorful papers I'm going to add behind them. The first layer behind the white paper is going to be that dark green polka dot. So having that white in between my photos and that dark green really helps my photo stand out instead of just kind of blending into that paper. So I'm going to glue those down and then cut just a thin strip of this as well, a thin border of this around my photos, and trim those up, and then I can move on to the other bits on this page. So I also pulled out a kind of black and white graphic paper, also from Sweet Story. I really like to use papers like that to add a border around my entire page. I feel like it just adds such a nice frame around the entire layout. So that's what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to use the white cardstock that came in the kit as my background, but then add a border of that black and white kind of triangle print around the edges. So you'll see me do that here in just a bit. But right now I'm going through the ephemera pack that came in the kit, looking for anything that works with my photos. Again, mostly looking for pink tones, but that wood grain really works since it's kind of an outdoorsy, and you can see our fence in one of the photos as well. So I thought the wood grain worked really well. And some black and white elements as well, because I have that black and white print that I plan to use in the background. So to do that, I am just going to trim off the branding strip, and then I'm using my trimmer to cut the center of this paper out, since I definitely don't want to waste it. I just line it up with the 1-inch mark on the right side of my trimmer blade, and then use the ruler that's on the piece of plastic that holds the blade itself to cut from 1 inch to 11 inches, and that gives me a 1-inch border around the entire outside of the paper. And then I'm going to cut off 1/2 inch from 2 sides of my white paper, and that's going to make it so that I have a 1/4 inch border around the entire page and plenty of room to adhere the papers together. So I'm just adding a little bit of tape runner around the edge, centering that on that border piece, and then I am going to go off camera and stitch around the entire thing just to add a little bit more texture, and also to make sure that that's really secure, that they're not going to go anywhere, that they're going to stay together. I just used some white thread just because I didn't want it to stand out too much, but I did want that extra texture. So you're going to see here in just a second, I show you that I stitched around the whole thing, and then I will come back and kind of rebuild the layers that I've started here. Okay, so there is the white stitched border, and I can kind of start rebuilding the layers. So I have these strips of paper, and I want to use them on either side of my photo, but I felt like they needed a little bit more texture, so I grabbed a border punch from my stash. This is just a notebook edge punch. It's actually the only border punch I still have. I got rid of most of my border punches several years back, but I kept this one because I tend to use it a lot because I really like the texture that it adds to a page without it being a kind of distracting pattern. So I did that to the larger of the 2 strips that I cut with the kind of 3 colors of pink, and then I adhered it to the side of my photo, making sure that you could see all 3 colors. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one, but I wanted to kind of pop up this photo on some foam before I did that. So I just grabbed some fun foam from my stash and cut a piece to fit the back of that photo. That's kind of the primary photo here, so I want to lift it off the page and make it so that your eye is kind of drawn to it before the other one. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that smaller strip of paper and use my notebook edge punch to add some texture to the side of it. And then I'll do the same thing as I did with the other one and just add it to the side of my photo on the opposite side. That way I have kind of a frame of those pink papers on either side. Of course, I never remembered to do this before I add the foam, so I had to peel back the foam a bit, and it was sticking out a little bit too much, so I go back in and peel the foam back a bit more and add it a bit further into my photo. I just want to be able to see the very edge of that pink paper. So I like the way it's coming together so far. I like the layers that I have, but I want to make sure that I don't design myself out of a place for my title. So I'm going to go ahead and get my title figured out, and then I can start adding the finishing touches once I know how much room my title is going to take and where I want it to sit on the page. So I decided to go with a totally cheesy title and do Berry Sweet Life. It was feeling like a Berry Sweet Life the day that I took these photos. I actually took the photos the same day I made this layout. We have a very small little raspberry patch in our backyard that I look forward to every year, and it has finally started producing ripe fruit. So we have been having lots of raspberry flavored things and really enjoying them. So I snapped a couple photos today when I went to pick the ripe berries, and the title Berry Sweet Life just seemed to fit really well. So I added those to my Thickers alignment tool just to kind of see how much space they're going to take. The alphas that came in the kit are from the Sweet Story collection, and they are they're all different, so none of the alphas are exactly the same. So I used 4 E's here, and none of them are exactly the same. So I wanted to kind of see how it was going to work together, how the letters were going to work together, and how they would fit onto the page before I decided where I wanted to put them. So I just added them to that Thickers alignment tool. That way I can move them around and figure out where they go before I stick them down. I did want to go through a few things from the Life Crafted kit just to fill out some of the embellishment. I picked out a few things from the ephemera and cut apart sheets, and then I grabbed those enamel dots as well, and I'm going to end up using a few of those on the page. But I feel pretty good about how things are going, so I'm going to start adhering things down. I start by gluing my layers together. That way I can make sure I get the placement exactly right. And then when I add the kind of cluster of things to the page, I know exactly how much space it's going to take up, and I can make sure I get everything centered. So I started with that photo on the left because it's going to go behind the other photo, and then I can add the photo cluster on the right as well. I did not add that little frame piece to my photo because I want it to sit flat on the page, and I have my photo popped up on foam. So I just glued it down directly to the page and glued the photo there overlapping the first one. Okay, so I have this little built-in area for my title off to the left there below the first photo. So I'm just kind of nestling the title all together, trying to get everything to line up. I do end up cutting a few of the little pieces of the letters that kind of stick off to the side just so that the title can sit pretty closely together. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of move things around and get it all lined up exactly the way I want it to. I'm trying to make it so that the letters do kind of nestle together, and it is the title just kind of flows all together there on the page. So I'm bringing back those berries now. I like how that larger strawberry fits in with my title, and I think I'm going to keep that there. And then I'm just kind of playing around with the other bits and pieces that I've pulled out, building up the clusters around my photo and around my title. I really love using the digital tags as layers behind my photo. So I've used two here. I've cut them in half and then added them behind my photo. They add a lot of texture and color, and I really like the way that those tickets and tags kind of look sticking out from behind the layers. I'm also going to add that Right Now die cut to the right side of my popped up photo. I like that it brings in a little bit more black. My title is black, but there really isn't any other black on the page except for that border. So I like that adding another pop of black really kind of ties all those things together as well. I'm also adding a few of the stickers from the Pinkfresh Studio sticker sheet that was in the kit. I'm sticking with this kind of purpley violet color because I just want to stay in those tones of kind of berry colors, right? So pinks and violets, and there is a little bit of red on the page as well. So I chose 3 stickers from that sheet. 2 of them have little houses on them, and one says Backyard Shenanigans, which I thought was really kind of perfect for these photos. I'm adding some foam behind that right now because my photo is popped up on foam. I needed there to be some dimension behind that die cut for it to lay flat on my photo, and I've kind of tucked it into the layers there, so part of it overlaps my photo and part of it kind of sticks underneath it, and I really like the way that looks. It looks like it's just part of the photo cluster over there. So I'm adding my date to that little date label at the bottom and then adding the sticker above that. I do also add some foam to the 2 stickers that are on the popped up photo, again, just to make sure that they lay straight on the page and that they won't kind of fall off or droop as I put the page in my pocket in my album. I'm nearly done now. I do add, like I said, a few of those enamel dots in a couple places, and I sometimes kind of struggle with enamel dots and how to use them or where to place them. So you'll see me play around with them a little bit. Eventually I get them in a place that I really like. I add them in 3 places around the page just to give that visual triangle that will kind of frame the primary photo of my page. So I start by adding 3 to each cluster, and I couldn't quite get them placed right, and then I realized what I really needed to do was just add 2 to each space, and that really just accentuates the embellishments that are already there, and again draws your eye to that main photo. So I added my journaling off camera just below my title and added a few splatters just using some ink from my stash, and then that's it for this page. So I hope you enjoyed watching this process and are able to find some inspiration for using your kits. If you haven't picked them up already, I will be sure to link them in the description box below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you back here soon.